Welcome, everyone, to BizTalk. I'm Michael Wang. The United Nations calls climate change the defining crisis of our time, with that change happening quicker than humanity anticipated. The UN's latest comprehensive assessment reveals that the international community is significantly off course in meeting the Paris Agreement goals, which aim to limit warming to well below 2 degrees centigrade, and ideally to no more than 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. Now, a research article from the journal Nature Communications estimates that between the years 2000 and 2019, extreme weather events driven by climate change have cost the world some $2.86 trillion US. Now, that breaks down to an average of about $143 billion each year in lives lost and economic damage. Now, climate change can only be tackled through international cooperation. China and Europe are two of the biggest carbon emitters in the world, but both are also at the forefront of ramping up renewable energies, rolling out clean technologies, and implementing climate-friendly policies. So how can China and Europe work together to tackle this defining crisis of our time? To talk more about this, I'm joined by Patrick Nijs, Belgium's former ambassador to China, Carlos Álvarez Pereira, Secretary General of the Club of Rome, which brings together a diverse group of thinkers to tackle the world's most complex issues, and Dr. Zhou Jinfeng, Secretary General of the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation. Gentlemen, welcome to BizTalk. A very important topic of the day. Ambassador Nijs, let me start with you. Where do we currently stand when it comes to China-Europe relations on working together to tackle climate change?
There is a kind of dialogue between the European Union and China going on climate change. There are also discussions going on a circular economy. We are in a critical situation, probably facing our own extinction, the sixth extinction. This is ours. And there are two major players in this game. Two major players, Europe and China. And if there is not a kind of qualitative leap happening like this, we will hit the wall and we will go. So will we be smart enough to anticipate the time where we will hit that wall painfully by starting to develop a kind of much more comprehensive cooperation where both would actually bring what they do from both sides together in order to have a significant impact, in order to mitigate our extinction, or we will just have to wait when we will hit the wall, and I think it will be too late at that time, because we will just be facing terrible situations which we have never seen in our history.
I mean, it almost feels like, in some respects, we've already hit the wall in certain elements, because this decade, the UN also calls the most critical decade when it comes to tackling climate change. We have this triple planetary crisis of biodiversity loss, pollution, climate change. Secretary General Pereira, I want to get your take on how do we make that qualitative leap that Ambassador Nijs spoke about, because right now, China and Europe, of course, this is a large economic and trading relationship, but there are differences. So Europe's rhetoric and tone on China, we have seen shifts. Right? It is a partner. China is a partner, but also seen as a rival and a competitor. So how do we manage these differences, which will exist, but also work on the greatest common denominator when it comes to the climate?
Very, very nice, interesting question. I think we need a shift in mindsets. When you ask about the cooperation between Europe and China in climate change, but also in many other challenges that you were mentioning, let's say there is one traditional framework for that, which is the framework of international relations, as they are usually conceived. In my view, we are entering into a new era of human history, which has to be the era of planetary reconciliation. Overcoming this idea that we humans compete with each other and that we can destroy nature. So we have to make peace with nature. Secretary General Antonio Guterres of United Nations has said that very strongly, but also we have to build relationships, for instance, between China and Europe, based on the very simple idea that no one can handle these challenges alone.
Yeah.
Not China, not Europe, not the US, no one. It's a common challenge, which is, and the health of the planet is obviously a common good that we have to take care of all together. I know this sounds like a nice wish, and this requires a mindset shift. But again, there are no limits to learning. So we are able, if we bet on the humanity and the capacity of everybody, we are able to learn in anticipation. Before hitting the wall, let's change, and let's change in a way which includes solidarity between humans to face these challenges.
Yeah. Dr. Zhou, let me come to you. What is China's perspective when it comes to working with Europe on climate change? What do you think are the biggest opportunities that currently exist and some of the biggest challenges?
Thank you. And in the past few months, we visit Paris to attend the Paris Peace Forum to talk about climate and biodiversity. And we are quite eager and open to visit Europe, to participate, to learn, to share, to cooperate. We think China has a big opportunity and potential to work with EU to tackle the major challenge of climate. That means we're on the same boat, a small boat. We have to work together. China and Europe is a very best fit. We have a big population. Europe have many related technology and know-how, policy, experience, work on this area. If we do not work together, we are not going to, nobody can win the battle. Nobody can sustainable living on the planet. And we have to work together. That we believe. And there are many, many synergy and opportunities we can work together.
Here on BizTalk, we connect the dots, shedding light on the real stories behind the economic landscape. To better understand China's dynamism and the economies and rhythms of business, propelling new drivers of growth.
China.
We are right now.
Chinese market is China.
BizTalk, your window into China and the global economy. Only on BizTalk.
Ambassador Nijs, we are seeing a rise in techno-nationalism. That is affecting clean technologies, of course, climate technologies. How do we work out perhaps cooperation on that front, where we see rising walls on technology, but we also need it to tackle climate change between China and Europe? For example, the anti-subsidy investigations that Europe is currently undertaking against Chinese EVs.
Well, this is quite a usual story. I mean, through the comprehensive strategic partnership, we had a mechanism to deal with that, and we were doing it. I mean, we went to the solar panel crisis. We went to issues which were of the same nature, but today it's speeding up. It seems that the technological stakes are becoming dramatic, and this is something which is a real matter of concern, because this will lead nowhere. So the only way we can stop this is precisely to understand that technology has to become a tool, an instrument to save our ass. And if this doesn't happen, we will go. I mean, I think people will realize that, and people will realize that, and governments will do also. I think China is aware of that. You know, China has extremely good think tanks, and they know that. So we have a chance, in a way, through this ecological urgency, to stop with this game and understand that technology, number one, it's not all the solution. You have to go beyond technology. It's also a kind of mindset. I think, as Mr. Carlos Pereira said, I think this is not only about technology. There is too much emphasis on technology, and I think in many respects. So technology is one of the tools we need to do that. And if we go for the competition, it will not work. The biggest problem today is with these semiconductors. You know, if someone starts with this, he is actually generating a kind of vicious circle where you will have an escalation. So the problem today is, how can we stop that? When you have an escalation like that, it has to be stopped somewhere by someone. And I think the ecological challenge is exactly the right answer. We need to stop that.
If I may, Michael, I mean, because there are different dynamics happening at the same time. So the Club of Rome is an active partner in something which has started this year, which is the International Decade of Sciences for Sustainable Development, approved by the General Assembly of the United Nations. And in our vision, this decade has to respond to address that question. You know, how do we mobilize in our vision, and it's the vision of the UN General Assembly, we have to mobilize all sciences. So one important point is that when we talk about science and technology, we typically think of nowadays of AI, of digital technologies, etc. The space of human knowledge is much wider than that. And the declaration of this decade asks for working together, basic sciences, natural sciences, social sciences, humanistic disciplines, artistic practices, and traditional knowledge all together. So this is an important aspect. And the other fundamental aspect, I think, is shift the model so that we mobilize the incredible resources that we have in science and technology all over the planet to address the common challenges, this common good that we all have to live. We have to find the pathway to human well-being for all, equitable human well-being on a healthy planet.
How do we reconcile, perhaps, the policies that we see in Europe, in China? Because sometimes if we say state support for something, that could have a certain connotation in different societies, in different economies. How can we work together, China and Europe, better to coordinate policies when it comes to clean technology and clean policies in general?
That's an excellent question, because in the most recent decades, the evolution of Europe has been towards the idea that the market does everything. The market forces do everything. You know, there was a big shift, because it was not like that. If you look at the history of Europe between the Second World War and the end of the 70s, there was a balance between the state and the private sector, with a general consensus across the political spectrum, and the main political families, the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats, that the state needed to have a strong role, you know, in sort of guiding society, while of course the private sector had also a strong role. This is largely abandoned. This has been largely abandoned in recent decades. And the issue in Europe is, if we now say the state is back, which it is, by the way, because without the state, we wouldn't have been able to deal with the pandemic, with the COVID pandemic. So suddenly, from one day to the next, we realized we can change everything. You know, we often hear, oh yes, tackling climate change is so important, but we cannot change. Well, with the pandemic, we changed from one day to the next. And second, the states, the different national states played the most important role. But right now in Europe, the issue we face from that political, that point of view, is that many people, millions and millions of Europeans, feel they are not heard. You know, there is this paradox right now of the European Green Deal is about, among other things, but about reconnecting with nature. The people who live every day in contact with nature, the farmers, are protesting in the streets of Europe against the policies of the European Green Deal. How is that possible? Because I think we need an act starting in Europe and in other places, but especially in Europe, start an act of re-empowerment of people, of really betting on the humanity and the capacity of everybody, and make people feel that politics and the state are there to care for them, to care of the common goods, and to make their life better, healthier, easier, but especially not only their lives, the lives of their children, of the future generations.
I would like to give two examples to support the idea. And in China, the EV, electrical vehicle business, without the state support, they're not going to be so fast and so good. And at the very beginning, the cost, the market will not accept. And the quality, the cost, compared together, the market will not support business to develop EV in China. But the state give very strong supports. And that helps the EV industry growing very fast. Today, you can see the result. The EV, China has a great market and has a great contribution to our shift to clean energy and environment. And another example is the solar panel. And solar panel is also, at the very beginning, the cost is very high. The quality, the stability, there are many issues around it. It's hard to get it into the state grid because it's not stable, like the traditional power station are quite different. But just because of the supports, the price goes all the way down, the quality go all the way up, and the technology to integrate that system into the state grid is so advanced. Now in our office, we can put down solar panel ourselves, and that also, the energy we can use by ourselves, and the extra energy we can go back into the grid, and the state grid will pay us for the supply of that electricity, which is very good compared for us to combat the climate issue is so great. But without the state supports, they're not going to have so fast, so good result. Compared with worldwide, we can see EV and solar, China products, quality, price are very competitive. That is also part of the supports. Of course, from the traditional market economy point, they think the support is not good. But considering we are facing the emergency, considering the only time that we left, we have to go this way. This is a very important way. And I would like another example is the health. China exports 12 billion heads in a year. And that's because of the market. Market economy is open. This is not under control or under support. But that is a big waste of eco resources. It's a big carbon emission, not necessary. And we should have certain control to regulate the market economy. That is few examples I would like to share to support the idea. Thank you.
.360-degree profiles of industry movers and shakers, tech mavericks, and policymakers. We drill down on their success. We ask how they set strategy and how they navigate in an increasingly competitive market. Real talk, real business. Join the conversation. BizTalk, only on CGTN.
Perhaps China's ecological civilization has some ideas on that front, because in ancient China, my understanding was there's this priority towards harmony between human and nature, and now modern China also needs to develop as well. Talk to us a little bit more about China's ecological civilization concept, Dr. Zhou, perhaps what it means for Europe and for the rest of the world.
Thank you. China's eco-civilization have two main points. One is we need to live harmony with nature. We need to respect nature. That is the focal, the core part. So that is the whole human beings today should also could follow that. We should respect the nature. In the past, we are trying to conquer the nature, try to get more out of the nature. Now, the presidency make it clear we need to respect the nature. That's the core part. Is the world view are changing. The world view today is we need to respect the nature. The second part of eco-civilization is we need to, that is two mountain theory. Make it simple is we need to respect the nature before we develop. If it's bad for nature, we should stop, even if our developing. That is the second part. We cannot waste the nature or destroy the nature for development. That's the central part of that's the methodology. That is worldview of two major parts of eco-civilization. And I would also like to talk about starting from EV. EV is not the ultimate solution, but it can reduce dramatically of the air pollution. And that is a halfway. But fundamentally, we need to change our way of life. We need to shift from the industrialized way of civilization. And, from the human beings' history, we start from primitive civilization and agricultural civilization and industrial civilization. Now we need a new civilization to feed the nature, the habitats, and to help human beings' survival of the recent time. So the eco-civilization it simply says it's a new way of life. It's a new way. Civilization including, this is a big level of civilization, including politics, including standards, including almost everything of today. We need all shift from, of course, many things we need to go back to nature, many things. For example, in China today, we have a regulation for the public, for the supermarket, the temperature control during the winter. You cannot set the temperature above 20 degrees because people do not need stay at the fixed temperature. We can live in the nature. In the old day, we do not have air condition. So it's set during the winter. You cannot set the temperature above 20 degrees. But during the summer, you cannot set the temperature lower than 26 degrees. We need to change our way of life. That fundamentally, we need to change almost main things. We need to learn from the past, the tradition. We also need to change, to improve all those, including the industry standards, like the room temperature control standards should also be changed, should fit in what we need today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting because in the Club of Rome we say that these new civilizations are actually emerging. The phenomenon of, when living systems face a critical situation, which is the case now, that opens the space of possibilities, actually. So you can go into different directions. Your way of being and behaving does not work well anymore. It's creating more crises than it is able to absorb. And then, of course, the space of possibilities, the good choices are not guaranteed. But there is a phenomenon which is understood now more, scientifically more understood, which is emergence, the capacity of something new to emerge. 6 years ago, we started speaking about planetary emergency, which was before people accepted the concept, And we started also talking about emerging new civilizations in plural. My personal take is that we will see maybe the same concept, but very different manifestations. Because if we want to have in the same expression ecological and civilization has to be adapted to the local context, to the geography, to the history, to the culture of the people who have been living there.
Yeah.
And then we talk about pluriversality. It's not one ecological civilization defined by somebody very clever, very smart somewhere, and imposed as a solution to the world. It's more a bottom-up phenomenon. This is why we say also emerging. At the same time, we need, I think, coming back to what Dr. Zhou was saying before, we need to have dialogues and bridge between civilizations, knowing and accepting that they will be different, and respecting that they will be different. But there is so much mutual learning that we could have. If each of these civilizations accepts we don't have all the solutions, we don't have all the responses, and maybe what people in Africa or in Latin America, we didn't speak about Latin America, or elsewhere, or in China, are doing can be valuable for us.
Yeah. Well, no matter how we slice it, I think there needs to be more mutual learning and mutual understanding between civilizations around the world, between China and Europe, if we want to tackle the climate crisis. Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much for your perspectives and thoughts on all of this. Thank you, Dr. Zhou. Thank you, Secretary General Pereira. And thank you, Ambassador Nijs.
You're welcome.
Thank you to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we're going to wrap up this episode of BizTalk here on CGTN. I'm Michael Wang here in Beijing. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time.